There is a freedom you choose and one which simply happens. My guest gave up his entire identity and moved to India to live in an ashram for 4 years, becoming nobody. Most of you had that same sense of self stripped away after a divorce that you may not have wanted, or maybe you thought you wanted, but then later regretted. Same emptiness, different route getting there. So, in this episode, we are going to focus on one big question. When the old you is gone, does it matter if you jumped or got pushed? And is the road back the same? Andrew Keaveney is a Stanford graduate who has taught breathwork and meditation for over 17 years in the US and in India. He spent 4 years volunteering and studying yoga, meditation, and Sanskrit in an ashram in India before returning to the US, where he helped launch the Art of Living Retreat Center. Apart from teaching, Andrew writes and produces videos about meditation, its social impact, and the research behind it. I'm so excited to have him here on the podcast today. Welcome to the podcast, Andrew.
Thanks. Glad to be here and look forward to our conversation today.
As do I. This is a lot of fun. So before we start, I just want to say I mentioned a little bit or alluded to in the intro that we're talking to you about choices you made voluntarily, choices to completely give up your identity, give up the sense of self. And divorce can be the same. It can be where somebody chose to get a divorce and then maybe regretted it later or maybe found themselves in this conundrum as to who am I? What's my identity now, right? Or maybe it was forced upon them and they didn't want that. So we're kind of comparing that today with the forced choice versus the unforced choice. So I would love to dive into this. There aren't many people who do what you did after college and move to India to join an ashram, except possibly Jay Shetty. Um, but I think it is so fascinating. So I want to ask you, first of all, I have to ask you, why did you choose this? Let's talk a little bit about that.
There was something about the contemplative lifestyle that really appealed to me. Through reading some books in high school and college, I got a glimpse that there was something more than the day-to-day life that we all experience. And then
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I started meditating and trying to meditate by reading and stumbling into it more or less and having enough of an experience to continue. And then I thought, I'm wrapping up college. I can either go directly to the next step, like my friends are doing, like my parents were encouraging, or, now's the time where if I really want to dive into this for a few years and see what it has to offer, now's the time. And then I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this, why not go to India, the land, where meditation originated, kind of the birthplace, a lot of these yogic and meditation sciences. So that was the trajectory
Wow.
in a nutshell.
Yeah, beautiful. So, was there a point when you were living in the ashram where it stopped feeling like a choice and where you intuitively knew that you could never go back to that old identity that you had, even if you wanted to?
There was a moment I recall. I'm having lunch. It's tasty. It was a nice day. I'd met some friends by that time. And I recall my mind was a little upset. And then I had enough wherewithal by that point to say, why is my mind upset? That's self-inquiry. And things around me are good. There's nothing to point at, there's nothing to blame. And it was in that moment that I realized, really truly my own personal experience, that the inward journey, the journey of the soul, the mind, it's not just about outward circumstances. It's really about getting in touch with and learning how to you know, embrace and accept and be at peace with our own mind. And
Hmm.
so that was one shift. There are many, but that was one shift I recall that really changed the trajectory of my life. Because then it wasn't about blaming this person or this circumstance for the state of my mind, but rather looking
Hmm.
within. And then based on that, okay, what are some practices and protocols to take it to the next level? So I'm just not aware of my inner world, but actively cultivating a garden there instead of just a thorn bush.
I love that. That's beautiful. And yes, you were becoming this new version of yourself, right? This, not new, this higher version of yourself, where, like you said, you were starting to listen and realize. And I think going through a divorce, which is really a trauma, is very similar to that. When you, again, even if you chose, like I chose to go through my divorce after much contemplation, it wasn't a rash decision. It was a long time decision. And I feel that when I started my healing journey, which I actually started before I made the decision, I had no idea what my new identity was going to look like. But I
Mm.
knew I had this excitement about it. And it wasn't fear that was guiding me. So I think maybe for you is similar because you chose. So do you think that the loss, that choosing that loss makes it different from, say, someone who doesn't choose?
Well, and there's a certain magic that you've brought up that in endings, there's an unknown.
Mm.
So often we fear the unknown because we want certainty. What's that next step going to look like? What's it going to feel like? Will I be safe?
Mm.
And at the same time, there's a beauty in discovering new horizons and being a new person, as you said. I found that in some of these voluntary choices to let go, sometimes we find an even bigger world than the world that we close out. That was certainly my experience. The world I stepped into had much more possibility, a lot of new ideas, new people, new situations. So
Mm.
getting comfortable with uncertainty is definitely a good skill to have and
Yeah.
allows us to step into a new life with a lot more ease and
Mm.
because things are never going to be certain, right? We don't know what
True.
tomorrow holds. Even the most stable situation, you know, look at the case of war, for example. People think things are comfortable, things are good, and then something that can happen that's out of our control. And so the quest for certainty has its limits. So being comfortable with uncertainty is really a gift.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think when it comes to the case of divorce, it's sometimes very hard, at least, many of the clients that I speak with are not comfortable with that.
Mm,
Because they're in that moment of the just living in the fear, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be alone for the rest of my life. What if I can't support myself? What if? There's all these things, and it's especially when you look at these marriages that lasted like mine for decades, and you're part of this union, you're part of this we, you're identified in that way, and all of a sudden you're thrust out into this kind of no man's land going, okay, what now? What do I do? And there's oftentimes a lot of fear. So
yeah.
I think getting to that point where you realize that it's okay to face that uncertainty. It's okay to stand in front of the path and be afraid to take that first step. But I don't know. At some point, most people, especially with guidance, realize that it is possible and they are capable and strong enough to do it. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, all endings are also new beginnings.
Yeah. I love
It can
that.
be, yeah, it's another step
Mm.
on the journey. Sometimes, like you
Mm.
say, we identify with a certain way of being, and when that breaks, then it's hurtful. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when we can expand our vision and say, okay, this was a moment in time. This was special. This happened. And there's also a really big world beyond this. And we start to expand our identity, that's where a lot of the growth comes. Sometimes, like you said, whether we like it or not, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, the potential for growth and exploration and expansion still exists.
Yeah. I love that. Beautiful, beautiful. Rumi says, there's a quote, I don't know the exact quote, but Rumi said something to the effect of, if you are about to go down a new path, you can't, you have to take that first step on that path. And you can't wait for someone or something to let you know whether it's the right path. You have to start walking it, and then you will be guided by what's in here, by what's up there, by whatever you believe, whatever source you believe in. But so yes, I think we definitely have to start. Do you think that your 4 years away dissolved all the old stories you lived, or did you just trade them in for new stories, for the like being the seeker, being the renunciant? I mean, how do you feel about that?
First, coming to poetry, I'm glad you went into that. It reminds me of another line by a famous Spanish poet. And he said, "There's no path. We make the path by walking."
Yeah,
And that always stuck with me because we want a way. We want, okay, this is the next step. It's
yeah.
like, okay, you make the journey by which path you walk. And
I think a lot of just human nature sometimes when you're faced with something traumatic or challenging, we sometimes just kind of go into that mode like someone needs to tell me what to do. What do I
yes,
do? Even the
yeah,
praying to God, praying to source. What do I do? What do I do, universe? And it's all that you have it. It's all here. It's all here. It's within you. And so, like you said in both of our quotes, um, you have to just start walking. I love
yeah.
that. Yeah. So what about the identity question that I just asked you about the old stories that you lived? Do you think that those stories were completely dissolved, or did you just trade them in for new stories?
I feel like it gave me the tools to dissolve them. One thing
Mm,
I love about the art of living and this path and the practices is it's so empowering. Coming into it, I didn't really have a clear set of techniques. Right after college, for the first couple of months, I went to a Zen center in the woods of California. Beautiful in many ways, but I was also so frustrated because we'd be sitting an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, and there wasn't like a clear, not to put fault on anyone, but there was no clear, this is how you meditate. That's
hmm
effective.
hmm
So then when I discovered the art of living, went to India to this ashram, it's like, okay, here are practices that can start to unravel the grip of these stories that we live and we tell ourselves. And
mm
that was a really real felt experience. And so some stories went away immediately. This is who I am, this is how I identify. Based on that identification, here are the concepts and the turmoil that I experience many times. The mind is tricky. Other stories took years to dissolve.
mm.
But I've definitely noticed in myself and the people I've worked with that over time we become more like my friend jokes, we become like the non-stick pans, right?
Oh, those are so bad
So
for you. Don't use
so
those,
bad for you,
anybody.
yeah, yeah. In the sense that the things that stick to our mind lose their
mm,
grip and we're able to have a more clear, clutter-free mind.
mm. That's a great analogy. I like it. Um, do you think that being unlabeled quietly becomes its own label?
It can. It's very possible. And
Yeah.
you meet people people are people wherever you go in the world
Mm,
who might be very A-type personalities, and they may bring that initial habitual manner of being into being A-type about yoga or A-type about meditation.
mm,
And at the same time, when you become more aware, you're also able to drop some of that. So you catch yourself faster. And again, it's not, I've seen that the path isn't about being perfect or never getting angry or never making a mistake, but the ability
mm.
to not get stuck in that, to come back to center faster. So we become, more like a line drawn in water and not a line drawn in concrete with some of the stuff that comes up.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said about the meditation and how you first went to the retreat in California and you were kind of disappointed because I I get this question a lot. Meditation's a big part of my life too, and I get this question from clients and from friends and people like, how do you meditate? How do you know how? What? How do I clear my head? And and I think I always tell people that, and I've done episodes on meditation, that I think one of the easiest ways to know how to meditate, because really I think it's different for everyone, but it's to just sit quietly. I love doing it first thing in the morning because it's the quiet. I call it like before the world wakes up, right? And it's just quiet and everything's not, phone's not ringing and emails aren't popping, and just I get up, I brush my teeth, I sit down, and I just first start thinking about how grateful I am for just
Mm.
being present, for being here, for my breath, for my children, for my dog, and I just start thinking that, and then I go through different chakra. But I think it's really a beautiful way to start a meditation practice because you don't need to, know what you're supposed to do to meditate. There's no such thing as clearing your mind. I mean, no one can really clear their mind unless they're, I don't know, completely enlightened, which there's not many people in this world who are completely enlightened, right? But I think it's a beautiful way to start. And did you find, I'm kind of curious as to what the beginning of your meditation journey looked like. I know it's off topic, but I'm interested in that.
No, free flow, it's great.
Yeah.
When I started at 16, it was reading a book, trying to do what it said and have that experience. And it was
Mm.
partly successful, enough to get me to keep trying, but also not enough that my mind wasn't racing and I wasn't thinking, am I doing this right? The doubts were coming up. And over the years, as I tried different practices and tried to, stumble into meditation, what I found really remarkable was using the breath. It was almost like a physiological reset. So instead of
Mm.
trying to think my way into meditating, I was like, oh, okay, here's some breath work, working with the rhythms of the breath. I did a technique called sky breath meditation that helped to reset the nervous system, kind of clear out some of that initial noise, if you will, or static. And then you're just automatically in a kind of meditative space. And then it's the art of resting in the quiet, as you said, and really diving into that part of our being, which is so beautiful and expansive.
Yeah. That's a wonderful point about the breath work. And I have several episodes on this podcast on breath work. And I think for those who don't have any idea how to start, that's probably a great place to start, is just the flow of the breath. Because like you said, it's just a whole nervous system reset. And
Yes.
yeah, you go into that parasympathetic nervous system, and that allows you to just come down. And then once you kind of master that, or you can, play with that for a long time. And there's so many different kinds of breath work too. And once you get I don't know, a feeling for that, it'll be easier to just kind of focus on the quiet, like you said. So I love
Mm.
that. Yeah. Which practice do you think you resisted the longest when you were in the ashram, and why?
Let's talk a little about letting go, since that's, you
Okay.
know, very much
Mm.
part of your show and this episode. To me, there was definitely some resistance around this idea of letting
Mm.
go. And sometimes it's clear, like we know, okay, letting go isn't inherently bad. If I let go of sugar, for example, I feel more settled, more grounded. If I let go of eating big, heavy meals, I feel fresher in the morning, I feel more relaxed. And yet, at some level, I think we associate letting go or endings with failure or
Mm.
with, sadness or fear, like you said
Yep.
before. So there was that bit of inhibition in my mind. Like, okay, if I just, you know, let go of my ideas about what my life should be like and what success looks like, what will happen? And this was, of course, fueled by the company that we keep. So my
Yeah.
parents and old friends were very concerned about what my new life looked like in India.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
gradually, over the years, I've come to realize that sometimes letting go is the fastest way to move forward. It just happened this week that had to take an Uber across LA, and I had to go to Southwest LA to the airport. But the Uber started driving east and then north. And I thought, okay, this is funny. But then he got onto the freeway. And for me, it was a reminder that sometimes, it's a little like being quiet, meditating or doing breath work to be more active, to have a more lively, clear life outside the meditation. Sometimes we let go of something that may have been important at a time, but that opens up a whole new world for us, even though at first it feels like we're losing something. So that was one part of the practice in
Mm.
India that was hard at first, a struggle to digest, is the value of letting go and how much beauty and new
Yeah.
expansiveness it can bring to us.
Yeah. I love that. That's just so beautiful. Um, yeah, to just I don't know. I think when you were sitting in that Uber, you could have chosen to be afraid, like, oh my gosh, where are we going? This isn't right. And you kind of just like, this guy knows what he's doing. He's an Uber driver in LA. So I'm just going to trust that I'll get there, right?
Yep.
Just letting go. And I did want to say one thing you mentioned about that, and the letting go in and of itself when it comes to divorce is I think especially harder because of the societal norms and society, culture, religion, family that still don't accept 100% that divorce is, okay or normal. There's still a lot of stigma, especially in certain families and certain cultures. Um, and there's a lot of negativity surrounding it in society still. So I love some of these movements that are helping make divorce more normalized, especially for families, like conscious uncoupling, where the couple actually has a ceremony where they take off the rings. The children are involved if there are children, and it's just a beautiful thing. And they make a promise to support the children, of course, to support each other as they each become two individuals with two separate identities now. And things like that just are beautiful. And I hope, and I think that it will catch on more as things go further in time. But I love those ideas.
Mm.
Yeah. So, what about, was there something that you maybe had to outgrow other than the letting go? Maybe that was really difficult from coming from here from the US, from being a college student at Stanford to going to India, that um, kind of you had to change and it maybe stopped working when you got there.
There were many things that,
Give us an example.
it's such a different culture. And
Yeah, I
so
bet.
I remember even, you know, 2 years into it, I remember walking through the street one day and it just kind of felt normal. And I had this realization like, okay, I've adjusted, I've acclimated because, you know, it's a lot busier. There's, there's 4 times the population of the US. So there's over 1 billion people now. And just everywhere you go, there's like lots of people. And as an introvert, it was also a lesson for me about how to balance those two sides.
Hmm.
Fine to be introverted, fine to be extroverted, but it's a skill I found to develop how to be, with oneself and also how to be with people, how to engage with people so that they also feel more comfortable and connected with. So
Yeah.
that was a big lesson that required dropping some ideas or patterns or ways of being and opening up to new ways of being.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. You told me when we first connected that you are a child of divorce. Do you think that added anything to your identity? And if so, did you tackle that when you made this change to move to India?
100%. I think that the changes and things that we experienced growing up, all these mold the person who we become. And
Mm.
some are choices that we start to make on our own in our teenage years, and others, it's the choices of our family. I remember one time my college professor was a very thought-provoking person. And I
Yeah.
made some comment about, oh, I experienced this with my parents. And he just erupted with something like, your parents had lives before you were born. And somehow it just struck me like, oh, I think when we're young, we just see our parents as our parents.
Hmm.
But then as an adult, we start to shift and we see, okay, these were two people making the best decisions they could with the, you know, training, the education, the environment they grew up in.
Mm.
And so gradually over the years with the practice, it engendered a lot more compassion and empathy and seeing other people as like we're all kind of connected. We're all in this together rather than blaming someone for something that happened years ago.
Mm.
So that was a big transition and moment of change for me is acceptance, compassion, and empathy.
Yeah. Those are all great qualities to learn and necessary in order to move forward. So thank you for that. Let's talk about kind of emotions. And um, I know that if you look at someone who's hurting inside, you might not see that on the outside, right? So is there a difference between numbing an emotion and actually releasing that?
100%. I think that's a very often overlooked component in the
Mm.
healing journey. I'll speak initially, well, it's relevant for everyone, but sometimes we don't know how to process emotions. So whether we're children or even as adults, it's not a training that we get in schools,
Mhm.
in households. Okay, when you feel upset, what do you do with it? How do you move from that to a happier place? How do you come back to center? So I didn't, see that training growing up. And so when we don't have that, what happens? They stack up, right? We have
Yeah.
stockpiles of emotions that we perhaps haven't felt. And
Hmm.
at some level, we might be numb to it, like you said. At another level, it's a little like when you get an injury, your body compensates by overusing another muscle. So let's say
Right.
I can't use my right leg, my left leg gets overused. Even after the right leg heals, my body's adapted to over favor the left leg. Similar
Hmm.
in our emotional or mental life. And so, in order to avoid this painful emotion, we lean into this behavior, this pattern, this habit. And all of those can distort our sense of balance over time. Whereas with tools like breathwork, meditation, they give us a potential, which is groundbreaking, I think, to experience the emotion in a safe container and give it a release valve, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
giving it a way to, even if we don't dig into it and rehash the stories, to release the charge, release some of that pent up pressure, stress, maladjustment, so we can really feel free. And I think
Yeah.
that's the gift that these ancient practices give to us, the ability, the techniques to find freedom.
Yeah. Oh, it's all so beautiful. Thank you for all this wisdom you're sharing. I love talking about things like this. Um, do you think when you went to the ashram that the goal was detachment, or do you think that passing through that tunnel to get to reattach to, life again as it was or as it could be or as it was going to be was the goal? Does that make sense?
It's such a good question. And it really, it hits at one of the major questions in the spiritual journey. Are
Mm.
we detaching for some kind of ultimate freedom or, growing into a new version of ourselves? And my teacher cleared out for me one time. He said, if I thought the best thing for you was to be in a cave meditating all day, that's what I'd have you be doing. And for me, coming from this with this idea of, the recluse and the mountains and the cave, it was a bit of a wake up call.
I
And
bet.
I love how, my teacher Gurudev is so socially engaged. And
Mhm.
so the path is really both sides. Like, how do we detach from, the chase after things and achievements that don't truly satisfy us,
Mhm.
and yet stay engaged? It's not leaving the city, so to speak, but how do we stay engaged with society, with relationships and community, and continue to nurture and build that from a space that's more unshakable and less swayed by all the ups and downs that are part of life.
Mm. Yeah. That is such a valid point and so very true. And I think, again, just to bring in this whole realm of a trauma like a divorce,
Mm,
I think the initial reaction is to just kind of curl up in a ball and just shut everything out. I don't want to go outside. I don't want to be social. I mean, I didn't have that, but a lot of people I talk to have this. And that's why I say get off your couch, get dressed, and go do something starting at the beginning once a week where you're outside doing something with other people, not on your computer. You're like going to a book club, or you're going to go join a intramural athletic team, or you're going to go take a
mm.
painting class or a cooking class, whatever sounds fun. Pick something fun. If you can't think of anything, what did you like to do as a child? Start with that question, but really just to get yourself physically up and out amongst the community, because we all need that. We some people think they don't. And a lot of introverts think I can sit here all the time and I don't need anybody. But we need to lean on each other. We need the sense of oneness, of community, and I think there's so many things you can do to nurture that actually help with the healing journey, help with the new discovery and the um, higher version of yourself, so that version can emerge.
One thing I love about that idea is there's a component of pleasure that we
Mm.
get in a relationship or in connection. And we can feel like that's in danger, or that our security, our world is falling apart when that goes. But doing these other activities, it's a reminder, there are so many other ways to experience joy in this
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
And to some extent, like, we have to detach our connection of, this is the thing that makes me happy. This is the
Yeah.
thing that makes me feel safe, and have a larger vision of that. Like, okay, I also enjoy doing this. Okay, some quiet time brings me alive. The
Mhm.
forest brings me alive. Community, helping at the soup kitchen or going on a walk with friends. There's
Yeah,
so many ways to get nourishment in this world.
that is so true. And again, it comes back to we're just circular, the very beginning where we're sitting here staring at this path and it's like afraid to dip your toe in the ocean, but you just have to start walking
Mm.
on it. And you might choose something to do that doesn't vibe with you, and that's fine. So the next time, pick something else and you just
Then
keep trying. Then yeah. So this is my $1 million question for you. And I'm excited to hear your answer. So if someone listening had their identity just ripped away last week and didn't choose any of it, what's the one thing you tell them that you wish you'd known in your own journey at the
I
beginning?
see. Yeah. One is to pause and be with that experience,
Mm.
and give yourself the space to really feel it fully. And that needs to be with another person, whether it's a meditation teacher or a counselor or someone, you know, that's good. But to give yourself space to experience it, and not to just keep running to the next thing, running to the next thing and avoiding it.
Yep.
That, and seeing the, you know, like they have this saying that every cloud has a silver lining. So allowing ourselves to also see that sometimes losing a part of our identity opens us up to newer horizons. And so
Mm.
that there can be, like, there's a saying that every failure is a stepping stone to success. And also that loss and the loss of identity kind of open us up to a new identity that might just be even more expansive and have its own blessings to it.
That was amazing. You said that just so well. And wow, you've shared so much of your wisdom, and I appreciate your time and your energy to be here with me on this show and talk about this. I think again, there's a relationship between choosing loss and not choosing loss. I think that the end result is or can be similar if we allow it to be. And I love your point about needing help sometimes, because sometimes you can't do it on your own, especially when you're talking about going through something traumatic. I definitely recommend getting some help. And it can be a beautiful journey if you just open your heart, your mind, and let yourself be guided in a little bit. Um, and you can actually grow spiritually so much, which is an incredible thing. So I thank you
I think
so
that's a
much for
great,
being here.
and it's a great point, just to close out, that you made about opening our heart.
Mm,
And so often it's easy to close our hearts when we're in pain, but
yes.
doing things like singing and just sing your heart out, right?
Hmm.
Brings so much joy.
Dancing.
Dancing,
Yeah.
right? You
Hmm.
know, close the door 5 minutes, dance it
Yeah.
out, helps process so many emotions. Dance with people, right? So
Yeah.
allowing potential to also open and clear out with music, song, dance is also really powerful. But
Yeah.
thank you, Rachel, and great being on the show with you.
Yeah, it was wonderful. You were a fantastic guest, and thank you for sharing. And if you are a woman healing from divorce, please know that this is a safe space for you to come and get help and listen to the wisdom and advice from wonderful guests like Andrew on how to heal. And I hope that you picked up something today. If so, please subscribe, please like, please comment. I want to hear what you're going through. I want you to share and share with a friend, because you never know, someone might really benefit from that. So thank you for coming and hope to see you next time.